14-year-old Sam had always loved airplanes. To her, they weren't just machines. They were symbols of freedom, speed, and precision. Every Saturday, she pored over aviation magazines and Air Force manuals her father kept in the study, memorizing every diagram, cockpit layout, and engine specification she could understand. Her bedroom walls were a shrine to flight. Posters of F-16 streaking across the sky, model jets perched on shelves, and a small American flag that her father had given her when she was 8, telling her it represented courage in the face of challenge. Despite all this, Sam was just a normal teenager, walking the hallways of Westbrook Middle School, carrying a backpack full of books, and enduring the usual teasing from classmates about being a future pilot nerd. This particular Saturday, the weather in Virginia was crisp and clear, the kind of day that made airplanes look like streaks of silver in a perfectly blue sky. Sam and her father, Colonel David, a retired Air Force pilot, were headed to the annual Wings of Freedom Air Force Base Open House, an event that brought hundreds of aviation enthusiasts, young cadets, and curious civilians together. Sam's father had promised her a behind-the-scenes look at the F-16s, a promise that had her bouncing in excitement all week. She tugged on her bomber jacket, the one she had secretly stitched with patches she had saved up for, each symbol representing a famous squadron or fighter pilot she admired. When they arrived at the base, the sights and sounds overwhelmed her. Jets of every size, from tiny trainer planes to massive cargo aircraft, were lined up on the tarmac. The smell of jet fuel mixed with barbecue smoke from food stalls, creating an oddly thrilling combination. Crowds of people moved between displays, some taking selfies with pilots, others waiting for static demonstrations or drone flights. Sam's eyes darted everywhere. Her father walked beside her, pointing out details the average visitor would never notice. "There's a reason the F-16 is called the Viper," he said, gesturing toward a sleek jet resting at the far end of the tarmac. "It's fast, agile, and deadly in the right hands. You respect the machine but never fear it. Control is everything." Sam nodded eagerly, memorizing every word. She could feel her pulse quicken as she imagined herself in the cockpit, instruments glowing, engines screaming, pulling G-forces that would flatten her against the seat. She knew she wasn't old enough to even touch a throttle, but she allowed herself to dream. That was part of the thrill, the imagining, the possibility, the almost real adventure in her mind. As they wandered closer to the F-16s, a group of pilots gathered near one of the jets, discussing flight maneuvers and laughing casually. Sam hung back slightly, not wanting to intrude, but she couldn't resist peeking over their shoulders, fascinated by the instruments, the sleek lines, and the meticulous attention to every switch and gauge. One of the pilots noticed her lingering. "You know your stuff, kid?" he asked, half teasing, half curious. Sam froze. Her father looked over and smiled. "She's not kidding, ask her something." The pilot raised an eyebrow. "All right, then. How would you handle a high-G turn if the hydraulic pressure drops by 20%? Sam's eyes widened, but she didn't hesitate. "You have to redistribute load to maintain wing integrity, adjust thrust to compensate for reduced maneuverability, and maintain communication with the wingman to avoid collision. And you monitor your G-force constantly. Losing focus even for a second could be catastrophic." The group of pilots blinked at her, silent for a moment. Sam's face flushed, but she stood tall, proud that she had answered correctly, even though she'd only learned it from books and her father's stories. One of the pilots laughed and shook his head. "You're good," he said. "Not many adults could answer that fast." Then, as a joke, another pilot leaned over and said, "I think we need a call sign for her. Something fitting." Sam giggled nervously. "Like what?" One of the pilots smirked. "Eagle One, because she's sharp and clearly has the eyes and instincts of a predator in the sky." Sam laughed, a little embarrassed, but the name stuck in her mind. Eagle One. The words felt like a promise, like a hint of something bigger waiting for her. She didn't know it yet, but that nickname would follow her through the next few hours, changing how the pilots, and she herself, would see what she was capable of. Just as she was about to wander closer to examine the cockpit, a crackle came over the pilot's radio. "Attention all units. Training mission requires an extra observer for rapid deployment. Immediate volunteers requested." The pilots glanced at each other. Some laughed, assuming it would be another adult jumping in. But one of them looked down at Sam, then back at the radio. He raised an eyebrow. "You listening, Eagle One?" he said with a grin. Sam froze. "Aye." Her father looked at her, a mix of caution and curiosity. "You sure about this, Sam?" Sam swallowed hard, her heart hammering. I can do it," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. The pilot chuckled. "All right, let's see if our little Eagle One can ride shotgun. Step up." And just like that, Sam went from being an awestruck spectator at an Air Force base to someone about to climb into the cockpit of a real F-16 fighter jet, a machine that could go faster than she had ever imagined and twist through the sky in ways she had only dreamed of. Her pulse raced, adrenaline surged, and a mixture of fear and excitement flooded her. The ordinary day she had expected had suddenly become something extraordinary, and there was no turning back. As she approached the jet, looking up at its sleek fuselage and imposing silhouette, Sam realized one thing clearly. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. Something inside her had shifted. The nickname Eagle One didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a challenge, a responsibility, and the beginning of a story she had yet to fully understand. Sam's legs felt like jelly as she followed the pilot toward the F-16. The tarmac stretched out beneath her, dotted with other jets and crew members, all buzzing with activity. The roar of engines and the scent of jet fuel made her heart pound even faster. She felt completely out of place, yet perfectly at home. Every instinct screamed excitement, every nerve whispered caution. This was no longer a casual visit. This was real. "Step carefully," the pilot instructed, pointing to the ladder leading into the cockpit. "It's not exactly built for a 14-year-old." Sam swallowed hard but climbed anyway, gripping the rungs tightly. The jet was larger up close than she had imagined, its polished fuselage gleaming under the sun. The cockpit seemed impossibly small, with buttons, levers, and glowing screens crammed into every inch of space. She felt a thrill of fear. This was a fighter jet, a machine designed for speed, precision, and danger. As she climbed into the cockpit, Sam's father stood at the base, giving her an encouraging nod. "Remember everything I taught you. Follow instructions, stay calm, and think clearly." "I will, Dad," she said, her voice shaking slightly. The pilot beside her chuckled. "Don't worry, just follow my lead. You might feel a lot of G-force today, and it's going to be intense." Sam nodded, her fingers brushing over the intricate controls. She could feel the raw power beneath her hands, the potential energy waiting to explode once the engines ignited. The canopy closed with a hiss, sealing her in a cockpit that suddenly felt like both a cage and a doorway to freedom. "Strap in, Eagle One," the pilot said with a grin. Sam buckled herself in, adjusting the harness as best as she could. Her knees were bent at odd angles and the seat felt narrow, almost suffocating, but she refused to let it intimidate her. She glanced at the pilot, who gave her a thumbs up. "Ready." "I'm ready," she replied, though her voice quivered slightly. The engines roared to life, vibrating through the metal, shaking the cockpit. Sam's stomach flipped with a mix of fear and exhilaration. The jet began taxiing down the runway, accelerating faster than anything she had ever experienced. The ground seemed to blur beneath her as the pilot guided the plane toward the sky. "Hold on tight, Eagle One," he said. "We're going up." As the F-16 lifted off, Sam felt the pull of gravity press her into the seat. Her eyes widened as the world below shrank rapidly. Vehicles became dots, people became tiny figures, and the base spread out like a miniature model. The sky stretched endlessly above her, a deep, flawless blue. She could hardly breathe, not from lack of air, but from awe. This was the moment she had dreamed of for years, yet nothing had prepared her for the reality. For the first few minutes, the pilot tested her ability to follow instructions. "Check the altimeter, Eagle 1," he said. She scanned the panel, confirming the readings aloud. Altitude 25,000 feet, airspeed 600 knots, systems nominal. The pilot raised his eyebrows. "Not bad." Sam's chest swelled with pride. She repeated more instructions, identifying fuel levels, engine status, and even suggesting minor adjustments based on her father's teachings. The pilot glanced at her, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "You've really done your homework, huh?" "I've studied," she admitted, cheeks flushing. Just as she was beginning to settle, a warning light blinked on the instrument panel, a mechanical alert indicating a possible hydraulic issue. The pilot frowned. "I've got it," he said, reaching for the controls. "Wait," Sam blurted. "Check panel 6 before overriding. The left hydraulic line is showing a pressure drop. It might be minor, but if we ignore it, the maneuvering could be compromised." The pilot paused, astonished by her clarity under pressure. "Good catch, Eagle 1," he muttered. He followed her instructions, running the diagnostics, and the alert cleared. Sam's heart pounded, but she smiled through the fear. For a brief moment, the cockpit was silent except for the hum of the engines and the rush of wind outside. "You're not just a passenger," the pilot said, glancing at her. "You're an asset." Sam blinked. The reality of her words hit her. She had been right. She wasn't just along for the ride. She was contributing, thinking, observing, helping keep the jet and its pilot safe. The nickname Eagle One felt heavier now, a symbol of responsibility she wasn't sure she was ready for, but one she refused to shy away from. The pilot then initiated a series of maneuvers, testing the jet's agility. Sharp banks, sudden dives, and high-speed turns pushed Sam to her limits. She felt the G-forces pressing her into the seat, making it almost impossible to move, yet she stayed focused, reading the instruments and calling out changes. Each time she did, the pilot followed her guidance, impressed by her calm under pressure. Suddenly, another alert popped up, a navigation warning about a potential collision with another aircraft in the exercise zone. Sam's eyes darted to the radar. "Adjust bearing 2 degrees starboard. Increase altitude slightly to avoid conflict," she instructed. The pilot executed her suggestions flawlessly. The near miss was avoided and the simulation continued without incident. Both pilots now looked at her with newfound respect. "Eagle one of them said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're a natural." Sam's stomach fluttered. Pride and adrenaline surged, but so did the awareness that she was still just a 14-year-old girl in a fighter jet, defying expectations and testing boundaries. She had dreamed of this, yes, but the reality was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. As the jet leveled out at high altitude, the pilot finally relaxed. "You've got guts, kid. Most adults would panic in that cockpit. You didn't even flinch." Sam smiled, the words sinking in. She felt transformed. The ordinary day she had expected, walking among static displays, taking pictures, and maybe touching a cockpit, had become a life-altering adventure. She wasn't just watching anymore, she was participating. She wasn't just dreaming anymore, she was acting. And in that cockpit above the clouds, with the wind screaming past her and the controls vibrating under her fingertips, Sam realized that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The pilot glanced at her one last time. "Eagle One," he said with a grin, "we're just getting started." And with that, the day that had begun as ordinary became the first chapter of a story that would challenge her courage, her skills, and her very understanding of what it meant to soar. The F-16 cut through the clouds with a force that made Sam press back into her seat. Every vibration, every roar of the engine, sent adrenaline racing through her veins. Her hands gripped the side rails as her eyes darted over the dizzying array of instruments and screens. Numbers, lights, and dials seemed overwhelming at first, but she had memorized enough to recognize anomalies instantly. She felt alive in a way she never had before, completely aware, completely present, completely terrified and exhilarated all at once. "Keep an eye on the altimeter and airspeed," the pilot instructed. "Eagle 1, I'm counting on you." Sam nodded, her throat tight but her voice steady. "Altitude 28,000 feet, airspeed 650 knots, systems nominal." The pilot glanced at her, raising his eyebrows. "Good, very good." For a moment they flew in silence, the world outside a blur of clouds and sun. Sam's heart hammered, but her mind remained focused. She was no longer just a passenger. She was an observer, a partner, someone whose awareness mattered in real time. Then, without warning, a warning light blinked red on the panel, a hydraulic alert. The pilot's expression hardened. "Hydraulic pressure drop," he muttered. "I've got it." "No," Sam shouted, pointing to a different panel. "Check the left hydraulic line on panel 6 first. The pressure drop is minimal, but if you override it without verifying, the maneuver could be compromised." The pilot hesitated. For a split second, he looked incredulous. A 14-year-old girl telling him how to fly an F-16. But Sam's voice carried certainty he could not ignore. He followed her instructions, and the light blinked off. "Eagle 1, he said under his breath, a mix of awe and disbelief. "You just saved us a lot of trouble." Sam's chest swelled with pride, though fear still coursed through her veins. She barely had time to process it before the pilot initiated a sharp bank, weaving through the sky at impossible speeds. The G-forces pressed her into her seat, every muscle screaming, but her eyes never left the instruments. She called out changes in airspeed, monitored altitude, and read the radar for approaching aircraft. "You're holding up well," the pilot said, glancing at her. "Most adults would be screaming by now." "I'm fine," Sam said, forcing her voice steady. Inside, her stomach was twisting in knots, and every nerve was on fire. She had dreamed of flying like this for years, but nothing had prepared her for the sheer physical intensity of it. Suddenly, the radar pinged. A simulated enemy aircraft had entered their airspace. The pilot engaged in a mock dogfight, banking sharply, dodging and turning at supersonic speed. Sam's eyes tracked the instruments, calculating angles, distances, and potential collision risks. "Bear left 20 degrees. Altitude increased 200 feet to avoid the approaching fighter," she called out, her voice cutting through the roar of the engines. The pilot executed her instructions perfectly. "Eagle 1, you're reading this better than my wingman," he muttered. The maneuvers became increasingly aggressive, testing Sam's focus and her ability to handle the unexpected. Every sharp turn and dive forced her to maintain concentration, despite the way her stomach flipped and her hands trembled. She realized she was capable of thinking clearly under extreme stress, a skill she had never tested outside of her father's simulated scenarios. Minutes later, another alert flashed, this time a navigation warning. Another aircraft, part of the simulation, was closing in rapidly. Sam's eyes darted across the radar and instrument panels. "Adjust bearing starboard 2 degrees. Altitude plus 300 feet. Maintain formation with our wingman," she instructed, trying to keep her voice calm. The pilot followed, narrowly avoiding the simulated collision. Both pilots exchanged stunned glances. "You're incredible," one whispered. "She's just a kid." Sam's heart raced, but she forced herself to focus. The thrill of flying, of participating, of making real-time decisions that mattered, it was intoxicating. She realized with growing clarity that her role was no longer passive. She was actively shaping the mission, contributing in a way that had tangible results. After a few more minutes of high-speed maneuvers, the pilots eased the jet into level flight. The sun glinted off the canopy, and the clouds stretched endlessly around them. Sam took a deep breath, finally allowing herself to relax slightly, though her hands still hovered over the controls in instinctive readiness. "You handled that first test better than anyone I've seen at your age," the lead pilot said. "You didn't flinch. You didn't panic. You stayed sharp and precise." I just did what I thought was right," Sam admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, leaving her both exhilarated and exhausted. The second pilot chuckled. "Kid, you're not just a passenger anymore, you're part of the crew." Sam felt a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. She was only 14. She wasn't trained to fly, she wasn't officially part of the squadron, and yet here she was, making decisions that mattered in a fighter jet hurtling through the sky. The nickname Eagle One no longer felt like a joke, it felt like a badge of honor, a call to responsibility she was determined not to fail. Then, just as she allowed herself a moment to revel in the achievement, another alert popped up, real this time, not simulated. A minor mechanical issue in the auxiliary power unit. The pilot glanced at her. "We'll need to monitor this carefully. Could be nothing, could escalate if we ignore it." Sam's mind raced. She recalled a diagram her father had shown her about the system. Check the pressure gauge. It's trending slightly low, but still within limits. Monitor for any sudden drops and notify me if it goes below 60%. The pilot nodded, impressed. "Eagle One, you might just be the most observant passenger I've ever had." As the F-16 leveled out and glided above the clouds, Sam allowed herself to look outside. The world stretched out like a painted panorama, mountains, rivers, and forests passing beneath at impossible speed. The sky was vast, endless, and breathtaking. Her heart swelled with exhilaration, pride, and the unmistakable knowledge that she had just passed her first real test in a way that even adults might fail. The pilots exchanged quiet smiles, a silent acknowledgement that this extraordinary passenger had changed the dynamics of the flight. For Sam, this was just the beginning. The sky was no longer a limit. She was part of something bigger, something thrilling, something that demanded courage, intellect, and instinct. And in that moment, at 28,000 feet, understood what it truly meant to soar, not just as a passenger, but as Eagle One. The roar of the F-16's engines filled the cockpit as Sam clung to the side rails, her knuckles white. The simulated dogfight that the pilots had initiated was no longer a gentle test. It was a relentless sequence of sharp turns, steep dives, and sudden climbs that pressed her back into the seat with every maneuver. Her stomach twisted, but her mind remained razor-focused. She had no choice but to stay alert because every decision, every observation mattered now. The pilots, at first skeptical of a 14-year-old passenger, were starting to realize that Eagle One was no ordinary teenager. "Keep tracking the opposing aircraft, Eagle One," the lead pilot said, banking sharply. "Call out positions and relative speed. We need your eyes." Sam's eyes darted across the radar and instruments. Enemy at 10 o'clock, distance 3,000 feet, closing at 600 knots. Adjust heading 10 degrees starboard. Maintain altitude 28,000 feet. The pilot executed her instructions smoothly, nodding. "Good. You're reading this better than my wingman." Her heart pounded. The thrill of giving directions that were actually being followed by trained pilots was intoxicating, but she forced herself to remain calm. Panic would ruin everything. She focused, breathing steadily, checking instruments and radar, calculating angles and potential risks. Every second counted. Suddenly, the simulated enemy aircraft dove sharply toward them, initiating a mock attack. Sam's instincts kicked in. Roll left 20 degrees, then climb 15 degrees immediately. The attacker is closing fast on our 6 o'clock. The lead pilot's eyes widened in surprise, but he obeyed. The aircraft responded perfectly, avoiding the simulated threat by inches. "Kid, I can't believe you called that in time," he muttered under his breath. I just calculated the trajectory," Sam replied, trying to hide how terrified she actually felt. Her stomach flipped with every maneuver, yet she remained entirely focused on the instruments, the radar, and the pilot's movements. The maneuvers intensified. The pilots performed barrel rolls, split-S dives, and rapid ascents. Sam's head spun, but her mind stayed sharp. She noticed a minor fluctuation in the airspeed indicator. Throttle slightly up, engine output dipping. Correct before it affects maneuverability, she called out. The lead pilot glanced at her, astonished. Eagle 1, you're monitoring engine performance too. Always, she said, teeth clenched, adrenaline coursing through her veins. A sudden red light blinked. The hydraulic pressure in the left stabilizer had dropped slightly. Sam didn't hesitate. Hydraulic line 2 is trending low. Recommend limiting bank angles until stabilized. Call for alternate maneuvering if required. The pilots exchanged a look. Then the co-pilot, normally in charge of instrumentation, nodded. She's right, he said. Adjusting now. The jet corrected smoothly. Sam exhaled, her chest tight with relief. She realized that the nickname Eagle One was no longer just a playful tease. It had become an identity, a role she now embodied fully. The dogfight simulation escalated further. Another enemy jet appeared on the radar, approaching at a dangerously high closing speed. Sam tracked its movement, calculating angles and distances, and called out directions to keep her pilots safe. Her voice, calm and steady, was in stark contrast to the chaos of the cockpit. Altitude plus 200, bearing 10 degrees left, she shouted. The lead pilot executed her orders flawlessly. The simulated threat vanished off the radar. He glanced at her with awe. Kid, you just prevented a collision. In a real scenario, that could have been catastrophic. Sam felt a rush of pride but quickly refocused. This was only a test, a trial. The real world was far more dangerous. Yet, for the first time, she realized her knowledge, training from books, and hours of observation had practical power. Her ability to act quickly under pressure wasn't just theoretical, it was life-saving. As the simulation continued, the pilots decided to escalate the challenge further. They introduced multiple enemy aircraft, forcing Sam to track, calculate, and call out instructions while the jet performed extreme maneuvers. She found herself mentally mapping positions, speeds, and predicted trajectories, all while physically enduring the crushing G-forces that pressed her into the seat. Her legs ached, her arms trembled, but she refused to let it show. Eagle 1, another one on your 6 o'clock, the lead pilot shouted, banking sharply. Roll 20 degrees starboard. Enemy closing at 700 knots. Adjust altitude 30 feet up. Keep distance from terrain, she commanded. The pilot obeyed, narrowly avoiding the simulated threat. The second pilot clapped lightly on her shoulder. You're unbelievable, kid. Calm, focused, precise. Most adults wouldn't last 5 minutes in this cockpit under pressure. Sam smiled through the tension, though inside her heart raced. She realized she had passed her first real test. Under extreme physical and mental pressure, she had remained composed, perceptive, and effective. She wasn't just a passenger. She was contributing, directing, thinking, and acting in ways that mattered. The lead pilot eased the jet into level flight. All right, Eagle One, he said with a grin, you've officially proven yourself. Not just a passenger anymore, you're part of the crew. Sam's chest swelled with pride. She realized how far she had come in a single flight. She had faced pressure, fear, and the unknown, and she had risen to the occasion. The adrenaline still coursed through her veins, but it was tempered by a deep, growing confidence. Thank you, she said quietly, feeling a rare moment of humility. I just tried to help. The co-pilot smiled. Helping, you saved us more than once today. Most adults wouldn't have had the presence of mind you showed. As the F-16 leveled out, gliding through a sky streaked with golden sunlight, Sam looked out the canopy and saw the world below in miniature. Roads like ribbons, rivers winding through forests, and mountains rising like silent sentinels. It was breathtaking. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to enjoy the view, to revel in the thrill of flight. Then the lead pilot leaned toward her. Kid, today was just a test. The real missions, they'll challenge you in ways this simulation never could. But if you handle yourself like this under pressure, you might just have what it takes to fly someday, really fly. Sam's heart skipped a beat. She had dreamed of this moment her whole life, yet she hadn't expected it to feel so real, so intense, so terrifyingly exhilarating. And as the jet sliced through the clouds, the nickname Eagle One felt more like a destiny than a joke. The day had begun as ordinary, mundane even, with her simply accompanying her father to the airbase. But in the cockpit of an F-16, screaming through the sky at impossible speeds, had discovered a new truth. Courage, focus, and knowledge could transform a mere passenger into a hero. And that realization, more than anything else, ignited a fire in her that would never go out. The calm after the first test was deceptive. Just as Sam began to catch her breath, the radio crackled with an urgent message. Restricted zone breach. Civilian emergency reported. Immediate reconnaissance required. All available aircraft respond. The pilots exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't a simulation. This was real. Eagle One, the lead pilot said, his voice tight with concern, this is serious. We may have to monitor the situation directly. Are you sure you want to come along? Sam's heart pounded. The adrenaline of the previous dogfight was still surging and fear clawed at her chest, but she knew the answer immediately. I can help, she said firmly. I know the instruments. I can track, calculate, and relay information. I'll follow every instruction. The lead pilot hesitated, then nodded. All right, buckle up, let's move. The F-16 roared to life again, engines screaming as it accelerated down the runway and lifted into the sky. Sam's stomach twisted as the G-forces pressed her into the seat, but she focused on the instruments, radar, and communications. The situation was unpredictable, dangerous, and far more intense than anything she had experienced so far. As they climbed toward the restricted zone, Sam monitored the instruments and communications. She noticed a pattern in the reports from other aircraft approaching the area. Traffic's converging from the northwest, she called out. Recommend holding altitude 28,000 feet until we assess the situation. Also, monitor thermal signatures. Heat readings may indicate civilians below. The lead pilot glanced at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. You're reading this better than half the squadron, he muttered. Sam's fingers flew across the panels as she adjusted tracking modes, cross-referencing radar and thermal imaging. The air was thick with tension, every second crucial. She felt her pulse spike as a warning light blinked. The auxiliary fuel system was trending low. Without hesitation, she relayed, throttle increased 20%. Monitor fuel levels closely. Altitude adjustments may be necessary to maintain efficiency. The pilot obeyed, executing the adjustment flawlessly. Good call, Eagle One, he said. We could have missed that under pressure. Then the real danger appeared. A civilian helicopter was hovering too close to restricted airspace. The radar indicated proximity to a ridge that could endanger both the helicopter and their F-16 if a sudden maneuver was required. The pilot swore under his breath. This is tight. Keep your eyes sharp. Sam's heart raced. Maintain bearing 2 degrees starboard. Altitude 27,800 feet. Keep speed steady, don't. I'll track the helicopter's position and alert you to any sudden changes. The pilots followed her directions exactly, banking and adjusting without hesitation. The helicopter drifted slightly, but Sam anticipated it, giving commands in real time. She realized with a mixture of fear and awe that her instructions were actively shaping the safety of everyone in the air. She wasn't just observing, she was guiding the flight, preventing disaster. Suddenly, turbulence shook the jet violently. The instruments flickered as the craft struggled against a sudden downdraft. Sam gritted her teeth, focusing on stabilizing readings. Hold pitch 20 degrees up, increase thrust slightly, monitor G-force continuously. The lead pilot executed the instructions with precision, leveling the jet. Sweat streamed down Sam's forehead, but she maintained composure. The helicopter below adjusted its position, following a safer path. The danger was avoided thanks to her quick thinking. The pilots exchanged astonished looks. "I can't believe a 14-year-old just helped manage that," one said quietly. Sam's chest heaved. Fear still churned inside her, but it was tempered by exhilaration and pride. She had anticipated, calculated, and instructed in a life-or-death situation, and they had listened. She wasn't a passenger anymore. She was part of the mission, part of the team. But the real challenge wasn't over. As they approached the heart of the restricted zone, another alert flashed, a mechanical anomaly in the left stabilizer. It was minor but could affect maneuverability during sudden evasive actions. Sam immediately analyzed the readouts. Stabilizer pressure at 85%, trending downward. Recommend adjusting bank angles and avoiding extreme maneuvers until normalized. Notify wingman of potential instability. The pilot nodded, impressed. "Eagle One, you're handling this like a veteran. Keep tracking. We'll need every observation." As they moved deeper into the zone, reports came in of civilians trapped near a ridge after a landslide. The terrain was treacherous, and the helicopter needed guidance to reach them safely. Sam's eyes darted across the instruments, reading altitudes, terrain mapping, and speed. Helicopter bearing 105, altitude 1,500 feet. Recommend hovering 200 feet higher, maintain position while assessing rescue route. Terrain clearance critical. The pilots adjusted their path to provide aerial support while giving Sam room to monitor and guide the helicopter. Every instruction she gave mattered. A single misread could lead to collision or worse. Sam felt fear clawing at her, but she suppressed it, focusing only on data, angles, and trajectories. Minutes stretched like hours as they navigated the zone. Sam's observations became increasingly critical. Wind gusts approaching 15 knots from northwest. Recommend minor correction left. Helicopter drift detected. Maintain altitude to avoid ridge impact. The helicopter responded, moving safely along the path Sam suggested. The pilots executed a perfect flyover, ensuring visibility and communication. Sam realized that the combination of calm thinking, precise calculations, and clear communication was the difference between disaster and rescue. Finally, the helicopter successfully reached the stranded civilians. Relief flooded Sam, though her hands still shook slightly from tension. The pilots allowed themselves a small, quiet cheer. "You did it," the lead pilot said, voice edged with disbelief and pride. "You didn't just ride along, you saved lives. You saw everything, calculated every risk, and guided us through chaos." Sam exhaled, her chest heaving. The nickname Eagle One had transformed from playful joke to earned title. She had faced real danger and had not only survived but actively contributed to the success of the mission. Her father, watching from the base, felt a swell of pride and disbelief. His daughter, barely 14, had just demonstrated composure, intelligence, and courage under pressure that rivaled trained pilots. As the F-16 banked back toward base, engines thrumming, Sam looked out at the sky. The clouds stretched endlessly, painted with the golden light of late afternoon. She realized that her world had changed in just a few hours. The ordinary day she had expected, a routine visit to an airbase, had turned into a life-altering adventure. She had faced real danger, acted decisively, and emerged not only unscathed but victorious. "Eagle One," the pilot said softly, a rare note of admiration in his voice. "You're more than a passenger. You're part of the crew now." Sam smiled faintly, exhaustion and exhilaration blending into a profound sense of purpose. The F-16 soared over the horizon, carrying her toward a future she had only begun to imagine, one where courage, knowledge, and quick thinking could make her more than just a girl watching from the sidelines. She was Eagle One, and this was only the beginning. Back at the base, the F-16's engines hummed to a halt, and the canopy hissed open. Sam climbed out slowly, legs trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion, but her mind buzzed with exhilaration. For the first time, she saw the magnitude of what she had just experienced. Not a simulation, not a controlled test. This was real. Real danger, real civilians, real decisions. and somehow she had helped navigate it safely. The pilots followed, removing their helmets and rubbing their necks. The co-pilot glanced at Sam, still in awe. "I've never seen anyone that young handle high-pressure flight like that, not even close." Her father approached, a mixture of pride, disbelief, and barely contained worry on his face. "Sam, you were incredible," he said, voice catching. "I knew you were capable, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined." Sam looked down at her hands, shaking slightly. "I just did what I could. I tried to think clearly like you taught me." Her father smiled. "No, Sam, you didn't just think clearly, you acted. You saved lives today." As they spoke, other pilots and base personnel gathered. Word of her performance had already spread. One of the squadron commanders stepped forward, a tall man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen decades of combat. He held a small black box in his hands. "Eagle One," he said, addressing Sam directly. "Today, you proved that courage and skill aren't bound by age. You demonstrated focus, initiative, and calm under pressure that many trained pilots strive for their entire careers." Sam's eyes widened. "I thank you, sir," she whispered, barely able to process the attention. The commander opened the box, revealing a carefully embroidered patch. Bright gold thread formed an eagle in mid-flight, wings spread wide, with the words Eagle One stitched beneath it. He held it out to her. "This is for you," he said. "You earned it. A symbol not just of today's achievement but of your potential. Wear it proudly. You've joined a select group, mentally, emotionally, and now officially in our hearts." Tears pricked Sam's eyes as she accepted the patch, feeling the weight of it in her small hands. The nickname that had begun as a joke now represented something far greater: courage, focus, and earned respect. Pilots crowded around, shaking her hand and patting her shoulder. "Kid, you were phenomenal out there," said one, a seasoned F-16 pilot with a gruff voice softened by admiration. "We didn't think anyone that young could stay that calm under extreme pressure. You kept your head, you calculated, and you saved the day." Another pilot laughed lightly. "I've flown combat missions with some of the best, and you just outperformed most of them. Eagle One, you're officially a legend around here." Sam's father watched, chest swelling with pride. His daughter, who had spent years dreaming about flying, had not only proven herself capable in theory but had demonstrated it under real-life stakes. He had always known she was intelligent and determined, but this was something extraordinary. The base public affairs officer approached, holding a camera. "We'd like to feature your story in the base newsletter and online. People need to know about Eagle One, the young pilot who demonstrated courage beyond her years." Sam's cheeks flushed, but she nodded. "If it helps others, I'd like that," she said. The photographers snapped pictures, capturing her with the patch proudly displayed on her bomber jacket, the sunlight glinting off the F-16 behind her. She felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. Part of her wanted to shrink away from the attention, but another part, one that had flown through danger, given precise instructions, and helped save lives, felt deservedly proud. The squadron commander knelt slightly to be at her eye level. "Eagle One, your story will inspire others. Young people, civilians, even our new recruits. Seeing someone your age stay calm, observant, and capable under pressure reminds us all why we do what we do. You're proof that age doesn't define potential, courage does." Sam's mind swirled. The events of the day, every sudden maneuver, every calculation, every life-saving instruction, flashed through her memory. It had all seemed terrifying in the moment, but now, reflecting on it, she understood the impact she had made. She wasn't just a passenger. She had contributed, guided, and ensured safety where it mattered most. Her father hugged her tightly. "I've always wanted to fly, Sam," he said quietly. "And I'm proud, yes. But today, you flew in a way I could never have imagined." Sam smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the patch in her pocket. "I just did what I had to." A group of cadets and younger aviation enthusiasts had gathered, having watched the flight from a distance. Their wide eyes reflected awe and disbelief. "That's Eagle One," one whispered. "She's amazing." "Yeah," another said. "She's like a real-life hero." Sam's cheeks warmed. She realized for the first time the effect she had on others. The nickname Eagle One was no longer just about her performance, it represented possibility, courage, initiative, a spark of inspiration for anyone who dreamed of the sky but feared they were too young, too inexperienced, or too small to make a difference. The pilots, now relaxed, laughed among themselves, joking about how the young girl had outperformed them in situational awareness, strategic thinking, and composure. Sam chuckled faintly. Despite exhaustion, despite her trembling muscles, a sense of belonging filled her. She was part of something larger, a community of pilots, thinkers, and dreamers who valued skill, courage, and heart above all else. As the day wound down, the base slowly emptied, but Sam stayed for a few more moments, looking at the F-16 she had flown in. The engines were silent now, the tarmac calm, but the memory of flight, danger, and triumph remained vivid. She touched the patch on her jacket, feeling the embroidered eagle. It was a symbol not just of her performance today, but of her potential tomorrow. "You've got a gift," one pilot said gently as he walked past. "Not just for flying, but for thinking under pressure, for staying calm when it matters most. Eagle One, you're going places." Sam looked up at the sky, golden clouds stretching endlessly. A quiet determination settled over her. She knew she had more to learn, more to prove, and more to experience. But today, she had earned respect, recognition, and a new identity. She was no longer just a curious teenager. She was Eagle One officially, and nothing would ever make her forget the feeling of soaring, guiding, and truly being part of the flight. For the first time, Sam felt that the sky wasn't a limit. It was an invitation. The evening sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink as sat on the edge of the airbase tarmac, legs dangling, bomber jacket pulled tightly around her. The roar of the day's engines had faded into the hum of distant machinery and the occasional chirp of birds settling in for the night. For the first time since morning, she allowed herself to breathe, to reflect, and to consider everything that had happened. The events of the day had been exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly transformative. Sam's mind replayed every moment, climbing into the cockpit, feeling the immense power of the F-16 beneath her, executing split-second calculations, issuing instructions that directly influenced the safety of the aircraft and a helicopter full of civilians. She remembered the warning lights, the alarms, the physical strain of G-forces, and the sheer focus it had demanded. And yet, through it all, she had remained sharp, attentive, and effective. "What did I learn today?" she asked herself aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. The question felt enormous. She thought of her father's words, the pilot's respect, the patch in her pocket, a symbol of courage and earned recognition. Each memory carried a lesson. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. Knowledge isn't just what you memorize, it's how you apply it under pressure. And sometimes age doesn't define capability, responsibility does. Her father approached quietly, kneeling beside her. "Thinking?" he asked, smiling softly. "I'm trying to process everything," Sam admitted. "I knew I loved flying, but today it felt like more than that. It felt like responsibility, like what I did actually mattered." Her father nodded. "It did, Sam, and that's a lesson not everyone gets at 14. Most people don't realize how much courage, focus, and quick thinking matter until they're tested. You've been tested and you succeeded." Sam looked at him, eyes wide. "Do you think I could really do this someday, fly for real?" Her father's gaze softened, but he didn't offer empty promises. "You have the heart, the mind, and the instinct. But real flight, real missions, require more training, more discipline, and more patience than you can imagine. What you did today is just the beginning. You've proven potential, not perfection. But potential is everything." Sam thought about the patch, the golden eagle, wings spread, stitched with her call sign. It wasn't just a recognition, it was a responsibility, a challenge. She realized that the lessons she had learned weren't limited to flying. They applied to every part of life: focus under pressure, calm during chaos, and acting decisively even when fear is present. She remembered the pilot's astonished expressions when she had predicted the hydraulic pressure drop, when she had guided the helicopter safely through the restricted zone, and when she had calculated angles, distances, and altitudes under extreme conditions. Those moments were validation, yes, but more importantly, they were proof to herself that she could rise to the occasion when it mattered most. The base's PA system crackled, announcing the end of the day's operations. Sam watched the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the tarmac. The jets sat silently now, sleek and silent, waiting for another day, another mission. She felt a pang of longing, a desire to be back in the cockpit, feeling the roar of engines, the pressure of G-forces, and the thrill of controlling so much speed, so much power. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "You know," he said gently, "it's not just about flying. It's about learning how to make decisions, how to stay calm, how to focus on what matters. Those lessons will stay with you, no matter where life takes you." Sam nodded, taking in his words. She understood. Today wasn't just about flying. It was about growing, about testing herself, about discovering her limits and then realizing she could surpass them. She thought about the nickname Eagle One, and how it had transformed from a playful tease into a symbol of courage, skill, and earned respect. It wasn't just a title, it was a responsibility, a call to keep learning, improving, and facing challenges. As darkness settled over the base, Sam allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. She thought about the pilots, the civilians, and the squadron commander who had recognized her potential. She thought about her father, who had nurtured her dreams and taught her the basics of flight and discipline. And she thought about herself, the girl who had stepped into a cockpit for the first time that morning and emerged not just unscathed, but respected, capable, and inspired. She realized that the day's experiences had given her a rare gift: confidence. Not arrogance, not a sense of invincibility, but genuine belief in her ability to stay calm, think clearly, and act decisively. It was a skill that could carry her through future challenges, whether in the sky, in school, or in life. Her father smiled at her quietly. "Ready to head back?" he asked. Sam stood, brushing dust from her jacket. She felt different now, stronger, braver, more capable. "Yeah," she said, voice steady. "But I know this is just the beginning. I have more to learn, more to prove, and more challenges to face, and I want to face them all." Her father nodded approvingly. "That's the spirit of a pilot, Eagle One. The sky is not a limit, it's an invitation, and you're ready to answer it." Sam looked up at the darkening sky, stars beginning to sparkle overhead. She thought about the jet, the day's missions, the lessons learned, and the people she had helped. She thought about the patch in her pocket, a tangible reminder of her growth and achievements. And she thought about the future, filled with endless possibilities, challenges, and opportunities to soar. She realized with quiet certainty that she had discovered something profound. Courage is born not in safety, but in moments that demand it. Knowledge is proven not in theory, but in action. And age is irrelevant when responsibility and skill converge. Sam took a deep breath, feeling the night air fill her lungs. She was tired, yes, but exhilarated. She was more focused, more aware, and more determined than ever. She had learned lessons that no classroom could teach, faced challenges that no simulation could replicate, and proven to herself, and everyone around her, that she was capable of extraordinary things. And as she walked back toward the base with her father, Sam understood that this was not the end. It was merely the beginning of a journey, one that would take her higher, faster, and further than she had ever imagined. She was no longer just a curious teenager. She was Eagle One, ready to soar, ready to learn, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Months had passed since that extraordinary day, yet the story of Eagle One continued to resonate throughout the airbase. Every time she walked past the hangars, pilots and cadets greeted her with nods of respect and whispered admiration. The patch on her jacket gleamed proudly in the sun, a symbol of courage, skill, and achievement far beyond her years. It wasn't just recognition of a single heroic flight. It was a testament to potential realized, a reminder that determination and focus could elevate even the youngest among them to extraordinary heights. Sam had returned to school, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. She carried herself with quiet confidence, aware that she had experienced something few could even imagine. She listened more intently, spoke more thoughtfully, and approached challenges with a calm decisiveness that had become her hallmark. Her classmates noticed the change. Some admired her, others her, but all sensed that she had crossed a threshold into something greater. Her father remained a steady source of support, guiding her, reminding her that the sky demanded discipline as much as courage. "Remember," he said, "Eagle One isn't just a title, it's a responsibility. Every time you step into a cockpit, it's about more than you. It's about teamwork, precision, and making the right choices under pressure." Sam nodded, understanding more fully than ever the weight those words carried. She trained diligently, studying aerodynamics, meteorology, navigation, and advanced instrumentation. Every hour she spent learning was an investment in future flights, in missions where focus and skill could save lives. She wasn't content to rest on her accomplishments. Eagle One wasn't a relic of one day. It was a continual challenge, a standard she set for herself. At the base, her story had inspired a new generation of cadets. Younger trainees, previously timid or uncertain, now approached training with renewed determination, motivated by the idea that courage and knowledge could make a difference, regardless of age. Instructors pointed to her example during briefings. "Look at Eagle One," they would say. "She's proof that focus, observation, and action matter more than years or experience." One afternoon, Sam was invited to speak to a group of new recruits. She stood in front of a room full of wide-eyed cadets, feeling the weight of her experiences, the responsibility to inspire without exaggerating. "You don't have to be the oldest, the strongest, or the most experienced," she said. "You need focus, courage, and the willingness to act. Every decision matters, every observation counts, and every moment is an opportunity to rise to the challenge." The cadets listened intently, hanging on her every word. Some whispered excitedly among themselves, others sat in stunned silence. Sam realized then that her journey was no longer hers alone. It had become a beacon, a story that would encourage others to embrace challenges and find their own strength in unexpected circumstances. Back in the hangars, Sam continued training with the pilots. She was no longer treated as a visitor or a curious teenager. She was respected as a capable member of the team, consulted on simulations, briefed on strategy, and encouraged to contribute ideas. Her knowledge of instrumentation, navigation, and emergency protocols had become invaluable. She still had much to learn, but she was learning faster, driven by a combination of curiosity, experience, and the recognition that she could make a difference. The media coverage of Eagle One's heroic day had also spread beyond the base. Aviation magazines and news outlets featured her story, highlighting her composure, intelligence, and courage. Sam's parents fielded calls and interviews, but Sam herself remained humble, insisting that her recognition should never overshadow the teamwork and guidance that had allowed her to succeed. She credited her father, the pilots, and the entire crew. She knew she had contributed, yes, but only within the framework of a system and team larger than herself. Despite her fame, the greatest satisfaction for Sam came from quiet moments of reflection. When she returned to the cockpit for training, feeling the vibration of the engines beneath her, the hum of machinery, and the vast expanse of sky stretching ahead. In those moments, she understood the essence of what Eagle One meant: responsibility, courage, and dedication. She wasn't just flying. She was learning, growing, and preparing for the day when her decisions could make the difference between life and death. One evening, after a long day of exercises, she sat in the cockpit of an F-16, reviewing flight data. She noticed improvements, mistakes corrected, patterns recognized, proof that each flight added to her skill, each maneuver honed her instincts, each calculation reinforced her judgment. The sense of accomplishment was profound but tempered by humility. She knew that every mission, every test, every flight carried potential risk. Respect for that risk was as important as mastery of the machine. The base commander approached, smiling. "Eagle One," he said, "you've set a standard that few can match, but more than that, you've inspired people. You've shown that courage, preparation, and calm thinking can make a difference in ways even adults might overlook. That's your true legacy." Sam looked at him, feeling the truth in his words. Legacy wasn't just about medals, patches, or headlines. It was about impact on the people she trained with, on the cadets she inspired, and on the lives she helped protect. It was about taking responsibility seriously, understanding that skill and courage were tools to serve a greater purpose. As night fell and stars began to glimmer overhead, Sam reflected on her journey, from curious teenager to Eagle One, from observer to active participant, from dreamer to doer. She had faced fear, embraced responsibility, and acted decisively under pressure. She had earned respect, recognition, and the opportunity to inspire others. And she knew this was only the beginning. The sky stretched endlessly above, full of possibilities, challenges, and adventures yet to come. And for Eagle One, the horizon was not a limit. It was an invitation. She had learned, grown, and inspired, and she would continue to do so, leaving a legacy that would endure long after her flight ended. With one final glance at the night sky, she whispered softly to herself, a vow and a promise. "I will keep flying, I will keep learning, and I will never stop rising." And in that moment, the name Eagle One was no longer just a nickname, a title, or a patch. It was a symbol, a legacy of courage, focus, and the unbreakable spirit of a girl who dared to soar.